Thank you. And thank you guys for taking the time to have a conversation with us. Periodically, we'll take a pause in the conversation and thank everybody for joining and reminding why we're here. So don't be alarmed. It's all just because we're recording it in case somebody jumps in. It's like, hey, why are they on Facebook Live? Then that's why. So once again, I'd like to thank you guys for joining us for Educate and Elevate for our first installment. We are excited to have an informative conversation on college admissions, financial aid, and the FAFSA. So we're going to jump around different questions on all three topics. Each of our panelist members will share their expertise and their experience in that particular area. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section. So first thing first, and this will be a financial aid related question. What is the significance of completing the FAFSA?
So the significance is, everyone could be eligible for, not everyone is eligible for free money, which is Pell Grant. So it's very important that you complete the FAFSA to see if you're eligible to receive any free federal money.
I would also say it's very important to file the FAFSA, like Mr. Brown said, to see what type of federal aid you may qualify for. Also, it's a prerequisite for scholarships. If you're interested in applying for any scholarships, we run into a lot of students that say, well, I'm not going to do the FAFSA. I don't think I'll get anything. But you need to file the FAFSA in order to apply for scholarships. So they go hand in hand, the FAFSA application and the scholarship application.
Yeah, I don't think that applying for college that anybody ever took the time to let me know that, hey, you completing your FAFSA is also attached to you receiving scholarship money. So thank you for throwing that in there as well.
And I would even add to that, completing your FAFSA is very important because for those students that don't have the opportunity for scholarships or grants, they have loan counseling for those students who have to take out financial aid loans. And it teaches you how you can have school paid for and how you can repay that once you finish school.
Perfect. Next question, admissions related. How would you explain the difference between a 2-year college and a 4-year? What would be key differences for you? I'll word it that way.
So for me, some of the key differences are some of the majors or opportunities that you might have at the 2-year versus the 4-year. So at a 2-year institution, you have an opportunity for an associate's degree for particular jobs like medical assistant, dental assistant, or court reporter. But then at a 4-year institution, you might have a bachelor's, master's, and doctoral program for more upper level jobs for 4-year that require a 4-year degree. Another key difference is sometimes 2-year programs can be a lot more affordable than 4-year programs, and they typically tend to be a little bit more flexible. So for those students that might have children, those students that might work a job or stay at home and take care of relatives, typically 2-year programs tend to be a little bit more flexible. Now with 4-year programs, you have more opportunity for campus life and athletic programs. That's not saying that 2-year programs don't have athletic programs, but there typically tend to be more athletic programs at 4-year institutions. And when it comes to campus life, sometimes you have things such as fraternities and sororities that you only see on a 4-year campus versus a 2-year institution. Another benefit of a 2-year institution, they typically have smaller classes. So truth be told, some students need a more intimate learning space. So those smaller classes come in handy. And I'll give the example of like the average classroom size at an institution like the University of Alabama might be anywhere from 150 to 200 students in a classroom, whereas somewhere at Austin State or Calhoun, your average classroom size might be 20 to 30 students. And I know for a fact, like I'm one of those people, I learn in smaller settings. So that a smaller classroom setting can definitely be a benefit.
Ms. Pamela, do you have anything to add? Okay. I can definitely agree. I chose the 4-year route, but even I think that based on the college university that you choose too, it also determines the class size. So what you may get at the University of Alabama is not the same that you may get at Alabama A&M. They're still large classes. They're not as large as Alabama. They're not as small as Calhoun. They're kind of in the middle. So that's something to consider too. And if anybody else ever wants to jump in, hey, feel free. It's an open conversation. Our next question. When is the best time to complete the FAFSA?
The best time to complete the FAFSA is when it first comes out. The FAFSA is always out October 1st. So it's best to complete it when it first comes out October 1st.
I would jump in and agree, absolutely. And you want to get it completed early, be proactive. Don't wait until a couple of months before classes begin, because there's more opportunities for potentially more financial aid the earlier that you do file the FAFSA application.
I'll even jump in and add, again, as early as possible, because a lot of times on the back end, once you complete that FAFSA application, there's still a paperwork process. And sometimes students find out a little bit too late that there's still paperwork that needs to be done. And what we don't want to happen is for you to have to do a whole bunch of paperwork your first day of school during orientation. One of the things we want to save you from is having to wait in these long financial aid lines on the first day of school. So the earlier you can get it done, the less you have to do your first day of school.
And the long financial aid lines are not fun. They take days to get anything resolved. You may go back one day, say, hey, we'll come back tomorrow because the person you need to talk to isn't here. So whatever you can do beforehand to get everything done, please do it. And it also goes back to knowing that the scholarship dollars that you may be wanting is attached to you completing your FAFSA. So the sooner the better. What information should be readily available when completing the FAFSA?
So you want to make sure that you have your social security number, your social security card. You want to make sure that you have your parents, for the upcoming year, you want to make sure that you have your parents' 2020 tax returns. Also, you can also use the data retrieval tool that's located on the FAFSA. But when using the data retrieval tool, you want to make sure that the information on the tax return matches, because if not, you'll have a hard time trying to import that information from the IRS.
I would also add, there are currently 2 FAFSA applications that are available. And oftentimes students get confused as to which application they need to file. So they need to pay attention to which year, if they're going to start in the fall of next year, or if they're going to start in the spring of next year. 2 different FAFSA applications, which do require 2 different tax years as well. So they'll need to pay attention to that. And note too that not only will the student have to set up a username and password, also known as FSAID, but the parent will as well if they're under the age of 24, and not to cross emails, not to cross cell phone numbers and such when they're getting prepared to do the FAFSA application. They'll need to also have their phone ready to verify everything, and their personal email. For high school seniors, it's best to use your personal email versus your school email, because that one expires once you graduate from high school.
Absolutely. I had so many students who use their school email to apply for scholarships, to where when we sent out information later on about follow-up opportunities, they couldn't receive them because they used their school email. Also, what happens in circumstances where maybe the kid isn't in the most ideal situation within their home, and maybe they don't have access to their parents' information? Do you guys have anything that you recommend for that situation?
So you will run into a host of different family dynamics and situations, and the student can still file their FAFSA application. It becomes more of the financial aid director's decision as to what what the outcome will be, but we do encourage them to still file that. They may get what's called a dependency override from the financial aid director to be able to file that FAFSA independently of their parents, because some parents don't want to give up their income information, or they don't have good relationships, etc. Mm-hmm. It's best to go ahead and do that FAFSA and then talk to that financial aid director at that particular college for assistance, but oftentimes we see that they do get, you know, financial aid and the help that they need. I don't want them to be discouraged and think they can't do it.
Absolutely. So it leads me into this question. So they contact the importance of knowing where you're going to go to school. So with that, I know that when I filled out the FAFSA, you had to have that particular school. I think like they're a code for them. Yeah, it's been a long time. Brain's a little rusty. So it would lead me to this question: how to select the perfect college or university? What are some key areas of consideration when selecting a college or university?
I'll start by saying one of the most important questions you have to ask yourself when looking at what college you want to go to is what are you passionate about? A lot of times you find students that go to schools for entertainment purposes, but keep in mind that the general idea and the general goal is to graduate with a degree so that you can work into your career field. One of the biggest things we see is that a lot of students go to school not knowing what they want to go into, which is also okay. But the sooner you have a plan, the sooner you can walk through that plan. And a lot of times students go to school for what mommy and daddy want them to go for. And then you end up in a major that you're not really interested in. And then that leads to a degree that you're not passionate about. Therefore, you end up with a job you're not passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
The first stage of going to school is knowing exactly what it is you want to do with yourself. And some students ideally don't have that answer right now. So this is the time to really ask that question. What is it I want to do for the rest of my life? Based off of that, answering that question, you can then decide what major you want to major in. Different schools all across the country have different majors, and there's so many different ways to gain a career in this country. It's ridiculous. And the most beautiful thing is there is typically opportunities for every job title you want pretty much in this day and age. So finding a school that meshes with the things that you're passionate about is the first key thing. The next things you want to look at are financial aid opportunities, scholarship opportunities, grant opportunities, and even if you can get those loan opportunities. Truth be told, you don't want to go to a school that is saying, hey, well, we only have loans for you versus a school that's saying, hey, we got a full ride over here for you. So you want to look at what school is offering you the money to get into the major that you're interested in. And then finally, you can look at the cosmetic things like what, organizations they have. Do they have Greek organizations and stuff like that? But the key thing, first find out what you're passionate about and find a school that surrounds you around the quickest way to get into the career that you're passionate about. Then secondly, who is helping me pay for school? Because you don't want this to be a burden on yourself or your parents. You want to take every opportunity to get as many scholarships and grants opportunities as you can. That would be my answer.
Absolutely. I'll say from personal experience, I didn't think any of that through. My thing was, where can I go to school to get me out of this little bitty small town? How far can I go without leaving the state? And that's what I did. I chose to go north. It's like, how far can I go without leaving the state that'll place me in a different environment? My thing was, I wanted to be in a different environment. I grew up in a place where a lot of people didn't look like me. And I wanted somewhere that had a culture of people who looked like me. I wanted to have that experience, which is why I chose to go where I went for school. But I didn't think about my major, didn't think about who was paying for anything. I didn't think about any of that stuff. It all came later. But hindsight 2020, it just wasn't the best plan. So don't do that. Take his advice and taking the time to think it out to make sure that it's something that you want to do. Because at the end of the day, even if you decide to pursue what mommy and daddy pursued, maybe you get a degree in it, maybe you don't finish school, maybe you end up 2 or 3 years into your program and decide you want to change majors, and now you practically have to start over. So you've wasted somebody's money, whether it's yours, whether it's the government's, whether it's your parents, somebody's money went to waste because you didn't slow down to make the decision of what you wanted to do. Does anybody else have anything else to add?
I think you guys covered it really well. The only other thing I will add is distance. You see a lot of students get homesick quickly, or they deal with depression.
Yes.
You may want to look at if that school's too far away, your capabilities of getting home on the weekends. And two, don't go to a college based on your girlfriend boyfriend relationship, because it can get toxic and really bad later. So that's the only other thing I'll add to that.
Ooh, homesickness. I think, yeah, it was my my first semester. I called my mom and I was like, I don't think I'm here. It's hard for me to make friends. I want to go. She's like, okay, well, you can come home. You're still gonna go to school. So you need to figure out what you're gonna do about school. Not going to school is an option. You can come home, but not going is not an option. So I was like, well, shoot, I might as well just figure it out. So that's what I did. Took a little time. It was a learning experience. That's all I can say. Alrighty, so let's see. Next question. We'll jump back into the financial aid piece. What are some common mistakes that you guys see on FAFSA applications?
Common mistakes, student will sign the FAFSA and the parent doesn't sign. So then it comes back to rejected. So it's very important that, you and your parent, if you're a dependent student, both sign the FAFSA. Another common mistake we see, parents complete the FAFSA and they put their information in on the student side. And so then you have to try to figure out, what happened, where did this information come from? So you have to, ask them these different type of questions to get a better understanding so you can correct the FAFSA. A common mistake that I've seen this year with incoming freshmen, they are putting their middle name on the FAFSA instead of putting their first name. And so it's kind of messing up in the system, and it's hard to pull the FAFSA in to put up under the right student. So that has been happening a lot this year.
I will add not taking advantage of the multiple school function where you can add up to 10 different schools. One thing we see a lot of times is a student might look at, like, let's say 10 schools, but then they only add their number one school. And then lo and behold, come May, when they get a scholarship offer, it ends up being from their number two school. Well, then you have to run back and redo this whole FAFSA process for another school. So at the beginning stages of doing your FAFSA, keep in mind, you can add up to 10 different schools. So make sure you add any prospective schools that you're looking at.
And I would say a lot of times students get in a hurry and inadvertently they will switch their social security numbers up, which is a nightmare because you're going to have to contact FAFSA to get that taken care of. With our Latino community, we see they have two last names often. And they need to make sure whatever's on the social security card, that's how they list it, because you may go as one thing in high school, but when it comes to this federal form, they want you to put it like what's on your social. And oftentimes they look at that, the two last names, the first of the last name they look at as the middle, and then the last name as the last name. So it gets confusing, and it does have to match with the Social Security Administration in order for it to be processed. And then lastly, when students go in and keep bothering the FAFSA to go in there and do stuff and make corrections, oftentimes they forget to resubmit it, and they don't realize that it has to also be processed again every time you go in and do something. So you can kind of leave it alone, but if you have to make a correction, you certainly can.
Also, to add to it, guys, males that are over the age of 18 needs to register for the selective service. If not, they're ineligible to receive federal funding until they register for the selective service. So it's very important that once they turn 18, that they register for the selective service.
And I will add also, making sure you keep up with your login information. I have heard it from the parents' mouths where they couldn't remember their password, they couldn't remember their username, so they just said, you know what, I'm not even gonna bother with it. Please keep up with your login information, because just like just pushing it to the side, this is a very important step, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. So something as simple as, getting in and out of the profile itself shouldn't hinder you from wanting to finish this process. So please just keep up with your login information, because this is something you're going to have to redo every single year. And especially with parents that have multiple children, This is something you're going to have to do multiple times. So making sure that you keep up with that FSA ID, because you can keep the same profile and use it for multiple students that are siblings, or if you have multiple children.
Before we made the decision to have this workshop, well, no, it was before we actually had the workshop. When the FAFSA opened, we kind of, Dominique did a little digging and also found some common mistakes for the FAFSA and errors to avoid. I don't know how often y'all see these, but I'm kind of gonna go through a few of them anyway. Of course, we talked about the importance of filing it, but one of the common errors is people fail to file it, filing the wrong year, missing financial aid deadlines, digits, putting in extra digits that, let's see, I think it says that cents are not reported on the FAFSA, so do not provide them. Using the wrong social security number, errors in the student or the parent marital status, reporting the wrong parent's financial information, failing to report step parent's income and assets, reporting the wrong tax filing status, and reporting retirement plans and the net worth of a family home as investments. I don't know how common, but those were 10. So yeah, I don't know. I think thinking through this, I guess my next question would be resource wise, if someone is needing help completing the FAFSA, having a hard time, who would they reach out to?
I can say Miles College has a financial aid advising office that can walk you through that process. But not only that, our admissions counselors have been trained to help students through the process. One thing we do when we go out and recruit, we found a 4-minute YouTube video that literally shows parents and students how to file the FAFSA, and it walks them through every single process of that. So we have 3 different ways we can help you: the video, us ourselves as recruiters, and then finally our financial aid office. And we literally spend pretty much August through May just training on financial aid, helping parents and students with financial aid. It's a year-long process. So our goal is to really get you across that threshold right before orientation.
I see a lot of head nods. So I guess everybody agrees. Once again, we'd like to thank you for joining the Educate and Elevate workshop. We are having an in-depth and informative conversation on college admission, financial aid, and the FAFSA. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. Last question on the FAFSA, in case unless anybody says anything in the comments. Does your college or university have a FAFSA or financial aid deadline?
So the Department of Ed lists on their site June the 30th. And that will give you probably at least the 2 months, typically before classes begin, to get everything done. But also check with your college, because each college can impose what they call a priority deadline, meaning that's the day that they would really want you to have it done to capitalize on the maximum amount of funding that you could receive. With anything, be proactive. The earlier, the better. Don't wait until late to actually file your FAFSA application. But seriously, you can file it anytime throughout the year, but you'll want to be proactive and get that done early.
I will say Miles tends to be a little bit more lenient. We go through orientation, which is in August. So we understand that we do get a lot of students that last minute change their mind and say, hey, I thought I was going to Alabama State, or I thought I was going to Alabama and I'm coming to Miles. So we typically try to work diligently through our orientation program to help students through their financial aid process, because obviously you're switching it to a new school now. So we tentatively try to extend it to about the last day of orientation, and sometimes we even extend it past the late registration. So it just depends on, like she said, how we feel at that point.
Antonio, do you have anything? Okay. Let's see. We're gonna backtrack just a little bit and talk about when a student should begin applying for college admission.
I would honestly say some schools allow you to apply your junior year. Like, we allow students to actually start applying their junior year. The only thing with that is we require senior transcripts. But ideally, most students start applying their senior year of high school. that's when you're going to start going to a lot more college fairs. That's when a lot more recruiters are actually going to start coming to your high schools and start talking specifically to you about their admissions. So typically junior to senior year is around the time. I say there's really no too early time to start looking at school. So you can start looking at college as your freshman year of high school if you want. But as far as applying, your junior to senior year are typically around the times you're going to start applying.
I don't know if is there a such thing as being too late in applying for college admission?
Yes, because some schools typically have deadlines. So some schools have scholarship deadlines, some schools have application deadlines, and then, like she just said, there are some financial aid deadlines. So the best thing I could say is make sure you're in contact with that particular school to learn when their deadlines are.
To go back to our conversation on, we talked about the differences between a 2-year and a 4-year university. What about the benefits of the two? You kind of touched on it just a little bit, but is there anything else that you'd like to add to that piece?
Yes, so there are a lot of benefits for students that are interested in trade programs. Those 2-year institutions still typically have a great opportunity for trade programs such as plumbing, electrical, cosmetology. I myself come from a family of electricians, and my grandfather actually taught electrical work at Lawson State Community College. So there's a wonderful opportunity for trade programs there. Outside of that, you typically get a lot more STEM opportunities with 2-year institutions. So these institutions typically partner with other institutions that offer science, technology, engineering, and mathematics courses. So you have that as well. Another thing is sometimes these community colleges can be closer to home. So I'm gonna give a real practical example. Given what has happened with the pandemic, a lot of students have elected to stay home or stay somewhere closer to home just in case something major happens. And community colleges sometimes give you the opportunity to stay a little bit closer to home. That way you can just commute to school and go right back home. So that's one of the benefits you have there as well. And that's pretty much a little bit I know.
Ms. Pamela, do you have anything to add on the benefits of a 2-year?
The only thing I'll add is probably more the intimate classroom setting and maybe more access to the professor and for help if you go to a 2-year college.
Yeah, I can't say that I ever took a pause to be like, okay, would it be better for me to be closer to home? Would it be better for me to have a smaller classroom setting? Would it be better just for me to take things slow and start here to make sure that college is something that I want to do and something that I would be interested in before going to a 4-year university? I didn't think about that. Don't be me. That's why we're having this conversation. How to apply for admission to college? What are some common mistakes on an admissions application?
Contact information, incorrect contact information. One of the biggest things that I've seen has been prank phone call voicemails and students that are afraid to answer telephone numbers outside of their area code. We have to explain to students that when you're applying to all of these schools, most of these schools aren't in your state, they're not in your area. So if you receive a phone call 9 times out of 10, it might be from one of those schools from a location that you're, not familiar with. So don't be afraid to answer telephone numbers that aren't familiar to you, because 9 times out of 10, maybe it's one of the colleges that you applied to. Another thing is just, making sure you put the correct social if that's required on, the application, making sure you put what majors you're interested in so we can connect you with the right programs if that's what you're interested in. That's all I can think about right now.
I don't know if everybody has answers to this question, but I know, like, for Tuskegee, when I was reaching out trying to find different universities and different colleges to participate, I know that I reached out to Tuskegee, and the recruiter for there, she had another engagement, so she wasn't able to come, but she gave me some information, which included that Tuskegee does not have an application fee right now. So is that the case for anybody else?
So same thing for Miles. Miles does not have an application fee. With us being founded by the CME Church, we take a holistic approach to admissions. So we feel like a student shouldn't be charged for an application fee. So for application.
Students also have what's called College Application Week coming up, where those fees will be waived and they can take advantage of that for the four-year institutions. It is free to apply to a two-year institution.
Mhm. And also to touch base on that subject as well, you have certain resources available to students, such as the Common App or the Common Black College app, where even if there are schools that have a fee for applying, with the Common Black College app and the Common app, you can pay one set fee and have that application be sent out to multiple schools at a time. So instead of you having to pay 30 sets of $25, now you just pay one fee, and the Common Black College app or the Common app will then send that application out to multiple schools. So that's a wonderful resource available to students who want to apply for a myriad of different schools at one time.
That is good information there.
I was
Lona,
gonna add, oh, I'm so sorry. I was gonna
Nope.
add also, he mentioned about having the correct social on the admission application. That needs to mirror and match your FAFSA application, because when retrieving that information, if those two things don't match, I have students calling me saying, Miss Pam, I know I've completed everything, but you put misinformation, then the college has a difficult time pulling that information.
And so if there's nothing else that anybody takes away from this conversation, it is to be careful on the inputting of your information. Go back through and read it before you hit submit. It's very easy to fat finger something if you're in a hurry or if you're just being careless. So just take the time that you need to make sure that you're inputting the correct information. Loan awareness. This is a hefty topic that it's near and dear to my heart because I have student loans that I regret. So we're going to spend a lot of time here. I don't really know how else to put it. We're going to spend a lot of time here and talking about the differences in the loans, what to do, what not to do, whether or not a refund check is actually needed, whether it's something that's important, because it's sometimes pitched in a way that makes you think that it's important. And then you later realize, well, what am I getting a refund from? Why do I need this money? So to jump right in, when I was getting ready to do my loans, I know that I kept hearing the words thrown around, subsidized and unsubsidized. And I'm like, what the heck is this? I don't know what this is. I don't know what it means. So can you guys tell us what the difference in between the two are and which one should be utilized first?
The difference between the subsidized and unsubsidized is the subsidized loan accrues interest after you graduate school, but the unsubsidized loan accrues interest while you're in school. And so most of the time, students would need to take out the subsidized loan because it's a need-based. Every student that I encounter, they always inquire about a refund check. I like to tell them, don't take it out unless you need it. It's okay to get a refund check, but you have to think about what's your payback in the long run. So I always tell them, if you don't need both of them, take out the subsidized loan.
In this adulting world, paying back interest is a very big thing that you don't want to be part of. So be careful because interest is a killer in all circumstances, not just student loans. Ms. Pamela, did you have anything? Okay. The next thing we'll jump into is private versus a federal loan. What is the difference? Which should be utilized first? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of each?
So with your federal loans, the primary difference in the federal loan versus the private loan is with the private loans, you have to have a credit check there. And oftentimes you have to have a cosigner versus with the federal loans, you won't see that. Another major difference is with your federal loans, typically you'll see that interest rate be lower and more affordable there with that one.
I think another thing to consider would be in situations like what we've experienced with the pandemic, federal loans have certain benefits that a private loan does not. So, for example, while we've been in the pandemic and we've been experiencing everything that we've been experiencing with COVID, the federal loans, if you're paying on them, good for you. If you're not, we're taking advantage of the fact that they can be paused right now during this pandemic. Whereas the private loan, you're going to pay on it. Rain, sun, natural disaster, it doesn't matter. You're paying for it. So take that into consideration. A private loan will also accrue interest a lot faster because the rate is higher on it. I took a private loan out, I think it was my freshman year in college, it was $1,000. Literally, that's it. By the time I graduated, that $1,000 turned to $5,000. So be careful. Yeah. So be careful. Don't know how many times I can say it enough to be careful. And I literally just needed just a little bit to cover my remaining balance. And I spent, I wasn't thinking about it, when I was in school. It's like, okay, it's just $1,000. We'll keep going. I just need just this little bit to cover the remaining balance, not realizing how much that would add up in the long run because I never started paying on it. I wasn't working that much in college. So, but I still could have been working and put a little here and a little there to make sure that $1,000 was probably good and gone by the time I graduated. So something to think about. Repayment and refinance options. Don't know how often people refinance loans. I know sometimes we consolidate them, but I don't know how often people refinance them. So we'll do these questions one by one. And the first one would be, how soon are students expected to pay back, to begin their loan payback?
So students will begin repayment on loans 6 months after they graduate from college, or 6 months if they quit college, and when they fall below part-time status, 6 credit hours. Then repayment on those is expected. The lender will begin to contact you and discuss with you, some payment options on that.
And they typically contact you by mail. So if you decide that you're not a person that checks your mail, guess what? They don't care. They're going to keep sending you stuff. And if you decide not to pay it, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of that. So check your mail and be aware of when you're expected to pay that money back. If you decide, hey, I don't want to go to school full time anymore, well, you're not going to school full time, has consequences. Hey, I want to quit. Maybe school's not for me. It also has consequences. So keep these things in consideration.
And that's the importance too. When you look at the federal loans, and I'm not saying that people who take out private loans, that they don't go over with them, the consequences and what they're getting into. But with the federal loans, you do have to do what's called entrance loan counseling. Mm-hmm. It helps the students to be literate and aware of what they're getting into. And after they read like a paragraph or so, they have to answer a question about that. And it gives them scenarios on how that loan could capitalize and what they're looking at, and when they do have to begin repayment on that. So make sure you take advantage of being literate and aware of what you're getting into as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say that most of the time when students accept the loans, there are more steps to doing that they need to complete. Like she said, there needs to be an entrance counseling, and there also needs to be a master promissory note that a lot of students, they don't complete. So it's very important that you do complete your entrance counseling, your master promissory note, if you tend to borrow loans.
And I will add, as a student, be involved in this process. Don't just let your parents handle this process alone, because at the end of the day, this is your education. You're the one that's going to have to walk across that stage. If you're this person taking out loans, you might be the one that has to pay back these loans. The reality of the situation for me was my sophomore year, my mom died. So when I had to sit in that room and have this conversation, all of this stuff went over my head, because I was like, well, my mom and dad pretty much handled all this stuff. So be involved in this whole process. And I know a lot of this stuff seems like a lot, but you want to make sure you have a clear understanding of what you're signing off on, what financial options are available to you, because when you graduate, Sally Mae is relentless. she will contact you, just like Ms. Potts said. They give you 6 months and it's coming in the mail. So you want to make sure that you understand exactly what it is that you're doing, exactly what you're paying for, and then exactly what needs to be repaid if you have to take out loans.
I think it's important to note too that even though, you know, we're having this conversation, and I'm sure that somebody's parent somewhere is watching, and you may hold your child's hand every single step of the way. And although there is nothing wrong with that, they still have to be fully aware of what they're signing up for and what they're going to be expected, what's going to be expected of them upon them graduating and upon anything happening. I think that it's super important to note that sometimes life happens. And when life happens, your child needs to know how to navigate and to keep pushing forward to take care of themselves. What arrangements can be made if the expected loan payment is not financially feasible? So, to give a little more background on this question, 6 months later, opened my mail and saw this statement that said, hey, you have a loan payment for $500. And I'm like, I just graduated. The job that I thought I was going to have, I don't have. So I do not have $500 to give you. In those situations, what do you do?
It's very important that once you receive that letter in the mail, that you reach out to your loan servicer and talk about the different options that repayment plans that you can get in. There's the income-driven plan that, you know, is based upon your income. There's just different options. So it's very important that as soon as you get that letter, that you reach out to your loan provider and speak with them and set up an arrangement that best fits you financially.
And then if you're not quite ready to pay on those, or if you can't, if you haven't landed that job yet, like Mr. Brown said, be in touch with your lender, and see if you qualify for forbearance or a deferment on that, which both essentially you get your payments suspended, typically for a year, to help you to be able to get prepared to make those payments.
With the forbearance and everything, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, there is, you only have so much time, so many times that you can do that. Not, I think within the lifetime, maybe, of the loan. Is that right?
I'm not for certain on that, but I certainly can get you an answer for that. Not for certain how many times within the lifetime of that loan they get to do that. Because I know people utilize it often, you know, over and over. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Thank you. And since my mind just deviated to this, I don't think that it's fully understood the weight that not paying your student loan pays on your credit.
So I'll talk about
drop the mic there.
So I try to teach students in high school that when you're in high school, your GPA is like the most important thing, because that's where a lot of your opportunities are going to come from. Well, as an adult, your credit score is like your GPA. No matter what you do, whether it's buying a house, buying a car, getting an apartment, that is something that is going to be a number that is very reflective of you. And you want that number as high as possible. So not paying on your student loans affects your credit tremendously, because it's just like your GPA in high school. The smallest little thing can drop it, but then it's the hardest thing to get back up. So you want to make sure after you graduate, your money management skills are going to have to be key, because you want to make sure that your credit is in a pristine position, so that if you want to buy a house, you can buy a house. So that if you want to buy a car, you can buy a car. So that if you have a child and you want to co-sign on your child's car and help them get something, you know, or help a family member, you can do that. Not paying on your loans is tremendous, because I mean, not only can it negatively affect your credit, but you can get to a point where they start taking the money from your paychecks. So you don't want to work a hard 2 weeks and then get to the paycheck period and notice that, hey, you know, the government took some of the money out of my check because I haven't been paying on my student loans. So I just want to emphasize again, making sure you completely understand what you're signing up for, what exactly it is you're doing, and how you, if needed, need to repay these loans so that it's not so much of a burden. Like they said, there's so many different options on how to repay these loans, and just ignoring them flat out right can do you way, way, way more damage.
You know how some people say out of sight, out of mind, and you think that makes it goes away? That's not the case here, guys. It will never be the case. If you don't give them their money, they're going to come and find it one way or the other. That's the thing about federal loans. They will find it, whether it be later on when you decide, you know, hey, I got a job, I pay taxes. Hey, I got a job. Either way, they'll take it. So be careful, guys. I know that we kind of touched on this earlier, but can we go through it again? What are the different repayment plans available? And before we go too far, go into that, I know that in terms of making sure that your loan payment is feasible, the numbers that are on there, they work. You might have to wait a little bit, but they answer the phone. And when they answer the phone, 9 times out of 10, you usually get somebody that's, I don't want to say eager to help you, but they will do whatever they can to make sure that you are knowledgeable in what your options are in terms of repaying your student loans. So those 1-800 numbers, save it in your phone, use it, call, because they can be a very, very, very good resource when you need for them to be. So yes, what are the different repayment plans available?
I can't think of all of them right off the top of my head, but I know it's the standard. There's the income driven, and there's 2 others that I can't think of right off the top of my head. But once you speak to your loan servicer, they'll be able to tell you the others and you know what the amount will be.
Let's see, I don't necessarily work in loans, but he's right. I did grab something from the loan officer, the graduated repayment plan, the income-driven repayment plans, and the extended payment plans. But again, talking to your lender and your servicer, there are a host of those, and they'll be able to assist you with what's going to work for you based on your income, and then the length of time you want to look at paying on those loans as well, and the amount per month you want to spend on the repayment.
So before we wrap up the loan financial aid piece of the conversation, refund checks. You know, you gotta love them, right? What is a refund check? Is receiving a refund check a financially wise decision? And under what circumstances, if any, keywords, if any, should you borrow more than what is needed to cover your tuition and fees, aka a refund?
Everybody's financial situation is different. Most students go to school and they depend on a refund check if their parents are not financially stable or, you know, able to assist with sending them money to help them get the necessary things that they need. I know, for example, you know, PT and OT students, they can't work during, you know, while they're in school. So they depend upon refund checks to pay bills and do things that they need that are necessary.
Wait, what are PT and OT students?
Physical therapy and occupational therapy students. So, you know, like I said, every student is different. Is it wise? You know, it just depends on the situation. You know, I can't speak for, or, you know, students that come in my office, they have different scenarios and different stories. And, you know, they come from different backgrounds. And so, you know, you want to advise them to do the best, but then also tell them if you don't need that, take out what you need. You never know, because what happens is some students tend to go to summer school. And so if they use all of that money within that year, then, you know, parents have to apply for a Parent Plus loan, they have to do a private loan. But, you know, that refund, it adds up.
It absolutely does, quickly. And the summer school piece is a very, very, very good point to add. I don't think that, again, there are a lot of things I didn't think about as it pertained to college. There was a day and a time where I needed to go to summer school, and I was like barely there with getting what I needed for financial aid because I had maxed out so much during the fall and the spring semester. So if you know that you, number one, don't be in a rush to graduate, but in those circumstances where you feel like you have to have this timeline in your head of when you need to graduate, take into consideration that you may need some of that money for the summer.
Also, just to add that, there are aggregate limits that we also have to follow by, dealing with financial aid. The Pell Grant percentage is 600% for, students who are eligible for Pell Grant. For subsidized loan, they can only borrow $23,000. But the max for undergrad dependent student is they can only borrow $31,000 in combined loan limits. Once you reach that $31,000, the parent must apply for the Parent Plus loan in order to determine their eligibility, if they can get more money. As an independent student in undergrad, they can get up to $57,500. So you also want to keep in mind that there are caps or limits to the loans as well.
And then not all students get refunds. It depends on what you have left over after your tuition and fees, books and supplies. And then you can, allocate and maybe have your refund. And then I wanted to touch on too, when you mentioned summer school, I don't think students realize when they file that FAFSA for that year, it covers them for fall, spring, and summer. Because students will call me and say, well, Ms. Pam, I'm going in the summer. Do I need to file a different FAFSA application? The answer is no. You're still under the umbrella of that same FAFSA. One cool thing that's happened over the past few years is Summer Pell has been available to assist students so they can get, the maximum amount of Pell in the fall, spring, and in the summer. And that's been very, very helpful.
Oh yeah, so I'll touch on something a little bit more simple too. I guess we all can say that we've seen students as we were in school only take out specific loans because they wanted extra money in their pocket just to do some crazy stuff with. Be wise in your financial literacy and understanding what this is. Again, if you're the type of student you need the resources, your parents can't help you out every now and then we understand that, taking out that money is more of a need than a want. But if you're the type of student where you're only taking out the money because you want some nice rims on your car and you really don't need it, but you just want it, keep in mind, you still have to pay this money back at some point. So again, use it wisely. Don't use it for things you don't need. I can't count how many times I've seen students get excited hearing the word refund check and they don't understand. Like, this is money you have to pay back. Like, you going to Saks and buying Gucci isn't relevant to you using this money for your education. And I'll even use the example when I was in college. For the major that I majored in, there were a lot of internship opportunities during the summer. Well, one of the biggest problems was, well, if you didn't have a source of transportation to get to the other state that had the internship, you couldn't get it, which you need experience to get into some of these fields. So using your financial aid to get you a vehicle that can get you from point A to point B seems a little bit more wise than going to buy clothes with it. You know what I'm saying? So just be wise, being financially wise, being, so financially literate from that point on as you're matriculating into college is going to be key.
I know too that there are certain circumstances in which you're able to, I know that you guys aren't loan officers, but from personal experience, I know that I think it still may have been my freshman year where I needed just a little more money, but with the circumstances that my mom was in at the time, we didn't want to go the Parent Plus loan route. Now we had to go above and beyond to get the little extra money that I got, but there is an option under very rare circumstances where if it's absolutely needed, it was then, I assume it's the case now, where you can apply for that extra money. Are you guys familiar? Okay.
So with the Parent Plus loan, they know that every parent won't be approved for the Parent Plus loan. So they set in place where if a parent is denied, students will receive additional fund as an additional unsub. For freshmen and sophomores, they get additional $4,000 for the year, which is $2,000 per semester. And then juniors and seniors get additional $5,000 for the year. So, that kind of helps out with them as well, just a little bit.
Thank you, thank you. Once again, we're nearing the end, but yet and still, thank you guys for joining us in our first installment of the Educate and Elevate Workshop series. We are having an in-depth discussion right now. It happens to be on financial aid and the FAFSA. And we're going to jump back in and talk about college admissions a little bit more. But before we do that, I lost my sheet. Work study jobs, ins and outs of those. Can you guys talk a little bit more about it?
Yes. So on the FAFSA, there's a question that asks if you are interested in work study. Work study is a need-based. So if there's a need and if you're eligible to receive work study, then you can get work study. Typically what happens is students will come in and we'll see if they're eligible to receive work study. If they're eligible to receive work study, then we give them a contract that they must complete and have the supervisors to sign off on it, stating that they, are giving them permission to work with them in that department. Typically what I do is most students that come to college has never had like a job. So I want them to have the experience of setting up like an interview so that, they can be prepared, for the real world. So that's what I did last year when I took over, just to help out with work study. I would just send the students' contact information over to their department supervisor. They would have like a meet and greet, kind of get an interview feel, just to see if they feel like that would be a great fit for that job for federal work study. Work study they are paid once a month. That kind of helps out with any necessary things that a student may need, if a parent is unable to, help them out during their time financially.
And the cool thing about work study is when you're at work, and if you're not working, you are allowed to study and do your homework. So it's a cool fix there to be able to work, get that experience, and to also work on your schoolwork while at work if you need to. And I think they, correct me if I'm wrong, Antonio, up to 19 to 20 hours per week with the work study.
Yes, they can't exceed 20 hours a week.
And
Go for it.
Oh, and I'll even piggyback off that. Sometimes with those work study opportunities, you work hand in hand, depending on what department you get in, you work hand in hand with your instructors. So that extra time you might need talking to your instructors, learning from your instructors, you get that during work study. So you then become almost like a student assistant. And sometimes it can help your whole friend group. Like if you're in a particular major and this chemistry class is hard, well, you get that extra time with your chemistry teacher, then you can help, in those study sessions with your friends. So there are a lot of benefits with work study.
That was going to be my next question. Placement. Who controls the placement of a work study job?
Typically what happens is we'll send out an email campus-wide to the, campus, and they'll request how many students that they're looking for. Most departments are looking for specific students that have certain majors, so they can get that experience to help out. Most of them are just looking for students that are willing to work and eager to learn. So basically it's kind of like hand in hand. They'll come in, they'll ask, I tell them what they're looking for. If they feel like it's a great fit for them, like I said, I send their information to the supervisor just to see if they feel like it's a great fit. So basically it's the student and the supervisor to determine, their placement.
Well, Bean,
And typically, if you land a work study position and you want to stay in the same office, if you do well, they'll make sure you get back in that office. And I know in the Office of Student Financial Services, we've seen many students transition from work study and now they're working in the office. That's their job that they're doing. And lastly, we're having a shortage of work study people, hello, thus the world. So if you're interested in work study, please do apply.
Apply, apply, apply. Before we end the financial piece of the conversation, I kind of wanted to put some things in perspective in terms of what you may earn post-graduation. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Tavares, when we graduated, give or take your field of study, you may have made anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000, which, for somebody sounds like a lot, but in present day, current way of the world, it's not as much as you think it is, depending on what your expenses are. And then when you add student loans into that, and the payment of your student loans, rent, car insurance, phone bill, cable bill, Netflix, Hulu, Apple Music, whatever your vices are, you add all of those things together, that 40, 50,000, maybe 60 if you're lucky, that you make annually is not as much as it seems. So when you kind of take that moment to reflect on what you're wanting to do in life and what it may cost you to do it, just remember, look up your salary. If you say, hey, I want to be a teacher, well, know that teachers, as needed as they are, they do not make the money that they deserve. So look into those salary benefits to see where you may land, because that's something that changes yearly. And even the projected numbers that I have, it has an engineering major making $69,000. And that was like in 2020 for an engineering degree. And an engineering degree is one of the higher paid earners. So look into that stuff, especially when you consider how long you may need to be in school and how much it may be for you to attend school and the payback of that. Factor all of those things in when making that decision. So before we wrap up, we're going to touch back on admissions for just a little while longer, and we're going to talk about understanding the overall admissions requirements, what the bare minimum admission qualifications may be, and then we talked about it already too on the role that academic scholarships plays in the admissions and the financial aid process. So if you want to touch some more on that, then you're welcome to as well.
So I'll start by saying every school is different. Make sure you are paying attention to the schools when they come to you, come to your school, or you go to a college fair, and you make sure you're reading your brochures to understand what the admissions requirement is for that particular school, because every single school is different. For example, I work at Miles College. We have a lot more leniency on a lot more things than most schools. One, we're open access institutions, so that means we do not look at a particular ACT, SAT, or GPA for admissions. So all we really require is that a student turn in a free application and an official transcript, and you will get accepted. Now, that's not the case for most schools. Most schools basically will require an application, some form of transcript or degree, and they will require like a particular test score requirement. That's some schools. Some schools don't. But making sure that application, transcripts, SAT or ACT scores are the bare minimum for most schools.
I think it's important too to know that when you prepare to take your SAT and your ACT, that you do not wait till your senior year to take it.
I will stress this. Take it as many times as you can, please. Because sometimes that can be the difference in scholarship opportunity. Sometimes that can be the difference in you getting in the school that you want to get in versus the school you don't. So make sure you're taking that test as many times as you can, because truth be told, the more you take it, the more comfortable you get in it. And I know sometimes the ACT and SAT can seem very intimidating, but they have study programs now. Schools are offering, a practice SAT and practice ACT. So please take advantage of these opportunities by taking these tests as many times as possible. Because truth be told, the school I was at, unfortunately, they didn't stress the issue until we were seniors already. And I missed out on a lot of opportunities, but I made sure once I graduated, I looked at my younger sister and I looked at my younger cousin. I said, hey, as soon as you get to high school, go ahead and start. And they did exceptionally well compared to what I was only able to do 2 times. So please, please, please take those tests as early as possible.
Yeah, I was a horrible test taker. Tests just gave me some type of special anxiety. So, and now that there are so many resources, there are resources, then I just didn't take the time. I was a lazy student. That's neither here nor there. There are so many resources that you can take advantage of to study for the ACT and the SAT. There are specific organizations that are dedicated to helping you prepare for these things. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. There are free things, there are costly things. Either way it goes, no matter what route you take advantage of it. Especially if you're like me and you get anxiety as it comes to taking tests, or you just don't like strategic tests and having to sit in one isolated place for hours answering questions. Take the test, take the prep work, do whatever it is that you need to do. What are a few frequently asked questions as it pertains to admission requirements?
So frequently asked questions typically are, what are your ACT and SAT requirements? Are you test optional? Is your application free? Do you guys super score? So super score is when you take the ACT or SAT, and they do the best of multiple scores. I know at our institution, we do the best of both scores. So if you take the SAT and ACT, whatever your better score is, we'll take that one. So those are some commonly asked questions during the admissions process. Also, is your school accredited? That was a big one for me, because the school I wanted to go to right out of high school, they lost their accreditation in my major, so I had to go with my plan B school. So is your institution accredited? Is your major or your particular majors accredited? Trying to think of any other questions.
How would one find out if their major is accredited? Because I don't think we realize there's a difference. The school can have accreditation, but that particular program that you're looking to go into may not.
So you can always go to a school. Typically, they'll always have it posted on the school website of all their accredited programs. But you can always just call the admissions office, or call. Typically, the school has a directory, so you can call that particular department to find out. But that is a key thing to be sure of, and make sure that the school itself is accredited, and again, the major that you're interested in is accredited as well.
Yes, it matters post-graduation a lot. One last spiel. I would like to thank you guys for your time, and to not just those that are watching, but you guys are sitting here answering all of my lovely questions. Thank you for your time that you've placed, and your preparation that you've placed in answering these questions so well, because you guys done an awesome job. Maybe a little nervous. We all are, yes. But everybody, you've been wonderful. So if you are just now joining in as we prepare to close everything out, this has been our first installment of the Educate and Elevate workshop series. The purpose of this series in its entirety is just to make sure that we're passing along the proper information. As you can see in my candid responses, there were a lot of things that I just didn't know, and you don't know what you don't know. And the purpose of this conversation is to make sure that you are more informed than what I was, or what we were when we went through these different paths of life. So although this is the first, it will not be the last. Our next workshop will be on November the 11th, and that will involve myself and Miss Dominique here. And we're gonna do another deep dive, and we're gonna talk about interview prep and your resume and resume creation and what that needs to look like. So that conversation will be a little bit different from this one, but it will still be as open as we possibly can. I enjoy having the back and forth conversations rather than putting together a slideshow, especially in this particular environment. I think that it helps people be more engaged. It helps you pay attention a little bit more. It helps your buy-in ultimately. So the purpose always for these workshops will be to share information with you. So if there's ever anything that you have questions on, if there's anything we talked about today that you have questions on, please know that the foundation is here to be a resource. You are more than welcome to send us an email at foundation@keyinspires.com.
Sorry, could you say that again?
My watch wanted to talk. So that's foundation@keyinspires.com. If I don't have the answer, I can probably find it for you. Hence this conversation. So just let us know. We're here to help. Before we close out around the room, do you guys have any closing remarks that you'd like to include? That's anybody, open to all. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Now is your time to shine.
I would just like to say thank you to everyone involved, the viewers, panelists, the people that put this together. It's a very beautiful event. I think we sometimes take for granted how key this information is. And to see an organization go out and give this information to these students is amazing. And I know Ms. Pamela, Ms. Antonio, everybody else, you guys could have been anywhere and you guys came, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for having us.
No problem. You literally could have been anywhere. And you guys have worked today. And after your hard work day, you decided to come and sit on here and talk to me for an hour and a half. So please know that that does not go without notice and without appreciation. Who's next?
I'm just going to say thank you as well. And I'm a scholarship girl, so I am going to drive in. Please apply for scholarships. We at Calhoun have academic, scholarships, but we also have foundation scholarships. And that's for people who don't have that ACT and they don't have that GPA. This is money from donors. So when you fill out that application, you can get matched up to that. And I'm going to tell you, many times you'll see people get more foundation money, sleep on it. They kind of, look at it like that versus the academics, because maybe you didn't meet those thresholds. So please do apply for scholarships. You never know the outcome. And then you have outside scholarships, where you get from other organizations. All that stacks up to be able to help you to hopefully offset loan costs. So please, please, please apply. I don't think you won't get anything. You would be surprised at the various scholarships that are available. Do your work and you will see it pay off. And thank you again so much for having me.
No problem. There are literally thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of scholarships that are available. I know that a couple of years ago, I looked at Calhoun's website to see what the requirements were. And if we wanted because we are a academically scholarship based organization, that's what started everything. The workshops kind of came later, but at the inception of the foundation, it was to provide scholarship money. And over the years, our goals and our missions have transformed to be able to just share information and realizing that was something that was lacking and it was a need that we could help provide. So we're putting our best foot forward to do that. But Calhoun has a list that goes on and on and on of scholarships that are available and what the different parameters are for those scholarships. And so, like I said, once upon a time ago, I almost entered to put in to just be a donor because it was just that easy. So, what is the name of that app? It is spelled SCHOLLY. It has you register for it. I think it's free, if I'm not mistaken. And
it's either free or $1.99, but yeah.
It's very inexpensive. In my binge watching and my enjoyment of Shark Tank, I saw that app. And believe it or not, that app was created by a student that houses scholarships on scholarships on scholarships. And like Ms. Pamela said, it's either free or it's $1.99. And it literally gives you a list of pretty much every scholarship that you can think of, whether it be national. There are some local scholarships that may not be listed on there, but again, it comes with checking into your resources. It's just so much free money that people just want to give away. Take advantage of it, please.
Can you please drop that in the chat?
What I just said?
Yes.
Yep, I will. Wow. I'm sorry, I said I will. Wow, you kind sir over here who hasn't spoken yet will give his closing remarks.
I just want to say thank you for having me, Kiara. This is great to help students that are first-time generations who don't understand the process and the necessary steps that they need to take to do the admission process and FAFSA. Had I known the information that I know now, I think I probably would have did things differently. So I do appreciate you for taking your time out to put this together and to help someone out that doesn't know about financial aid in the admission process. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Ms. Pamela, for dropping that link. Did you get it, Taurus? Perfect. Well, I don't think we have any questions anywhere that I've seen.
I don't think we touched on it, but I just wanted to mention before we leave the importance of tours, college tours, be it virtually or in person.
Can't hear you.
Oh, you said college tours?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes. Touring the campus can save you a lot of time and knowing if a campus really is for you. I'll give you an example. My grandfather graduated from Alabama A&M, and when we went for his graduation, I was like, it is what it is. So then when I got to high school, I was in my senior year, we actually did a campus tour, and I absolutely fell in love with A&M. So that can be the difference sometimes in you knowing if a school is for you. You get an opportunity to see the admissions team and understand exactly what it is you need to finish your admissions. You get to talk to financial aid and understand the financial aid process in depth. You actually get to talk to the teachers and the administrators so you can understand and meet these people who are going to inevitably be your teachers. If you're an athlete, you get some time to meet the coaches and understand what their idealisms are, what the team is like, what does it look like to go into the weight room for the first time. So you actually doing a tour on that campus can make the difference in you deciding on a school. I can tell you 100% that most of the students that come and do a tour with us, if they're on the fence about Miles College, they end up coming because that tour just changes like everything. So definitely campus tours are like very, very important. And given the environment of everything now with the pandemic, we do offer virtual tours and in-person tours. So if you stay extremely far away and you don't have the resources to come all the way to Alabama, we do virtual tours for you. But I can honestly say, man, we've gotten students in the pandemic that drive all the way from Dallas, California, New York, New Jersey, just because they have that much of a desire to see the campus. And it's like, I don't want to make a final decision until I see it for myself. So definitely, please make sure if you have an opportunity to tour the campuses, because that can make all the difference in you making that decision.
Yes, I think that the only campus tour that I went on was to Alabama A&M, and we went. And like I said, I grew up in an area where not that many people look like us. Antonio and we went to high school together. We grew up together. So when it came to I told my mom like a few years ago, I said, I don't really know how me as a senior in high school pulled together the resources to make sure that we could take the campus tour. But that was the only way we went. It took me, this high school student, putting my foot down to say, hey, this is something that I want to do. This is where I want to go. And so, I don't know, my guidance counselor at the time kind of rolled with that. I don't even remember who did it, who helped me do it, but we had to get a bus. We had to make sure that so many people participated. So I think I walked around like with a list of people like, hey, do you want to go? You know, I got to have X amount of people. And so whatever it takes to organize it to get it done. And we went on the school's dollar. Like we didn't have to pay for anything. Make it happen. Can't tell you how I did it in my adult life as a kid, but it worked out. So that just goes to show that nothing is off limits or impossible if you put your mind to it. Does anybody else have any closing remarks?
I'll definitely just say thank you guys for taking the time out to share all this information. It definitely was beneficial. I think I wish I would have had it before going off to school. But again, I think we definitely have a responsibility now that we know that we must continue to pass down this information. So thank you guys. Thank you guys.
And Ms. Potts, this year, the state of Alabama has mandated that every high school senior complete a FAFSA. Now, with that being said, they do have an opt-out, but they're not really enforcing that. They have to get it done to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
Seniors know this. They have to get that FAFSA completed to graduate this year.
Wow. That's something. Because I mean, you know, end all be all, not to like bash any school counselor, but sometimes they're overwhelmed. So the resources that maybe I need, maybe they don't know how to get them to me because they're so bogged down. So it pays to honestly just do your own research. And so them implementing something like that will help them hopefully do their own research. Any more closing remarks? Yeah, I was always told to take silence as concurrence. So thank you guys again for joining us. These events will continue to happen. We have a few more planned. So if you are not already following us on any social media platform, please be sure to do so. We can be found unanimously as the PottsFoundation on Facebook and on Instagram. If you are interested in donating to the organization in any shape, form, or fashion, we've dropped links to do that in the comments as well. If you have any questions, we've dropped our email. But just for informational purposes, the foundation email is foundation@keyinspires.com. And we are here as a resource to you. And the resource just is not limited to financial standings. If there's information that you need and that you're having a hard time getting, please let us know. That's why we're here. So if there is nothing else, we will go ahead and dismiss. So thank you guys for joining us. And hopefully we see you on November 11th when we have our next workshop on interview preparation and resume creation. It's a deep dive into how to prepare as a high school student for adult life, as we like to call it. A lot of times we go on and just go about life and we don't think about the skills that we're gaining alone in the process. So we're going to talk about those things and how to make everything that you're doing practical for your future. So if nothing else, we're good to go, guys. And thank you for joining us. Bye.